The approver may also log in directly into PeopleSoft to access the payment request that requires approval. Log in to My BJC Net using your Active Directory user ID and password. Access the Approvals tile via navigation. Go to My HR. Click on the Payment Request tile, and then on the Payment Approvals tile. The bottom left corner of the Payment Approvals tile will display the number of transactions awaiting approval. Click on the Payment Approvals tile to see the list of pending items. A full screen will show the description of all pending items. Total amount of each transaction includes the payment request ID, the payment request description, and the employee that submitted the payment request. The date the transaction was routed to the approver. Click on the transaction you would like to review. Total amount of the payment request. This will include the miscellaneous charges, freight, and tax amounts and line level totals. The summary section is high-level information about the payment request. It includes the request ID, invoice number, supplier ID, supplier name, invoice date, who entered the payment request, the description of the transaction which is for internal use, and the payment message which will appear on the check. It also includes the header-level details related to miscellaneous charges, freight, and tax. These expenses will be at the header level of the voucher, and it is no longer necessary to have line-level transactions for these expense types. If you try to approve a transaction without viewing the attachments, you will receive an error message that says, "Please view attachments before approving." Click on the View Attachments link to view the invoice. You must review the invoice before approving to ensure all details are correct. When comparing the invoice to the payment request, please double-check the invoice number, vendor ID, and amount being requested for payment. If the submitter does not have an invoice, they should contact the vendor to obtain the invoice. We rarely make payments from work orders, proposals, or documents other than actual invoices. For the accounting details, click the arrow on the line details to review the GL chart field data. Ensure the account, business unit, department, and GL details are correct. If there are any changes that need to be made, deny the request and send it back to the submitter to make the updates and resubmit. For the approval chain, this is where you will view each stage of the approval process. The approval chain will allow an invoice to be routed up the chain of command-gathering interim approvals before reaching the position level with final approval authority for the dollar amount of the invoice. The dollar amount approval limits are based on the BJC signature and payment authority policy. If the default approver does not have adequate dollar authority, their approval will be an interim approval, and the invoice will continue to escalate to each manager in the reporting structure until either rejected at any level or approved by the manager level with dollar authority for the invoice. If no action is taken, the invoice will auto-escalate to the next direct line manager after 10 calendar days. Dollar approval limits are automatically applied by the system and cannot be overridden. The manager will receive an immediate email after the employee submits the transaction. If they do not react immediately, they will receive a 3, 6, and 9-day reminder email. If after 10 days they do not react to the emails, the request will escalate to the next manager in the reporting chain. The next manager will receive an immediate email at 10 days, a reminder at 3, 6, and 9 days. If for any reason after 10 days, which is 20 total days, this transaction has not been approved or rejected, it will go back to the submitter as a canceled transaction. The submitter will need to create a new transaction if the invoice still requires payment. After reviewing all documentation and accounting details for this transaction, the manager can now select to approve or deny the transaction. If denying the payment request, the approver must enter a comment in the denial pop-up box. It is not a requirement to enter a comment to approve the transaction. Once clicking Approve for the transaction, you have now successfully approved a payment request. To view the quick reference guides, click the Home button at the top, then click on My HR Payment Request tile and Help and FAQ tile. If you have any questions about this training, please contact accounts payable at bjc.org.